find some new music. We're finding new music for this show, or I'd podcast that.
I think it was for I podcast that.
Gotcha. Well, cool. My name's Brian. Welcome to another episode of Sitch Radio, the podcast talking about Sitch Radio, the studio. If you're new to this show, this is geared primarily to those people in and around the Orange County, California area thinking about podcasting or are podcasting, whether it's with us or without us. We're just kind of going over what's going on here in the studio in the near future. If you'd like to learn more about podcasting, you can tune into the podcast I'd Podcast That, also hosted by me here at Sitch Radio every week on Friday, where we cover briefly a different topic about podcasting. You may learn something in the comments. You may teach me something. Reciprocal relationship here with that show. So don't hesitate to comment live. This show is being broadcasted on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We're Twitchers. Is that what they're called, Joey?
Something like that.
Yeah, he's shaking his head. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, enough about that. Man, the studio is getting busy. Sessions are filling up. So if you're interested in doing a podcast, starting a podcast, and you want studio help, make sure you reach out. Give us a call. Let's get you into the scheduling process so we can find a great day that works well for you and the studio. Imperative. Planning is a huge part of podcasting, and planning out recording and or live sessions is one of the steps there. So reach out to us. You can find us on the internet at sitchradio.com. That's SITCH radio.com, as in Sitch, situation. What's your Sitch? Or you give us a call. Our phone number is all over the interwebs, Google, Facebook, our website, etc. Shows this week. This was kind of cool. The Field Op, hosted by Pacho Carrera, who's actually in Qatar, had a major with the U.S. Space Force on. And I got to learn a little bit about the Space Force. That was kind of cool. First show, I believe, to have an officer with the Space Force on as a guest. So it was a cool experience. If you're unfamiliar with that show, Pacho Carrera is a Chief Warrant Officer 3, retired United States Marine Corps. And his show discusses military during, before, after, dependence of, just, all the craziness that goes on with being in and or around somebody in the service. The Field Op, check that out. Combat Vet Vision, Chief Siebert did a little tribute to Chris Rahagi. We briefly spoke about that last week, and Chris, you're going to be missed, brother. You're going to be missed. The Cacao Crowd last night did an episode about distractions and how they can be okay and or used in a positive manner. So if you're in the mindfulness space, you might want to check out the Cacao Crowd, hosted by Megan Hopper. EM Weekly had their show yesterday. And, if you're into emergency management, large scale disaster recovery, mitigation, planning, that's a great show. It's one of the premier emergency management shows as a podcast out there right now. He's Todd DeVoe's the host. He's had FEMA directors on, former FEMA directors on. Really, really great show. I know we have Dr. Anita's series. Dr. Anita's show is kind of cool. The first Saturday, in this case, it was second Saturday because of the holidays. She does a monologue piece talking about something and then what's coming up for the month. And she has her allies in action. So you can check that show out as well, among many other shows that we host here and work on at Sitch Radio. We've got Prepare, Respond, Recover. They are going to be remote in studio today. We're going to be recording their second episode for this year. The first episode this year is dropping next week, if I'm not mistaken. And it was actually recorded last, but it's regarding iPause. So if you're into emergency notification or alert systems, you might want to check that out. It was a really cool episode. And we're excited to have Prepare, Respond, Recover back in the production cycle. Wait, what? Financial Matters That Matter, hosted by Eric Bell, is coming back. They took about a year off. A lot of things going on in his life, and he needed to step away, but he is going to be back stronger than ever. And they are back in the studio Monday morning. Super excited to have Eric and guests back on the air and getting their shows published for them and out. In addition to this, we've got several other shows. Give Sitch Radio a check and see if there's anything that tickles your fancy. All of our shows can be found on, all your favorite podcast players, which is pretty cool. Business continuity today, core values. Todd and I got into a long discussion about core values, and is it more of an idealistic thought to have a core value, and or are there true core values? And he kind of spun off a show because of our heated conversation. And when I say heated, Todd and I go way back 20 plus years, and we get into some pretty argumentative debates from time to time. And this was one of them. January 18th, next week, we are hosting a meetup here in person. COVID precautions do apply, and we will be discussing advertising for podcasts. This one is geared a little more towards businesses interested in advertising on podcasts. However, if you're a podcaster, you might want to come in and check it out, because you're going to learn, what businesses should be looking for, what not to look for. A lot of great information. And it's one we do often. It's highly requested. So yeah, doors open at 6. The meetup starts at 6:30. And you should be out of here no later than 7:30, unless you're going to hang out a little bit afterwards. And then next month, we are doing a meetup on how to podcast on your own. And this meetup is geared towards maybe that hobbyist or someone that doesn't have a budget for, production services and or team. And we're going to talk about the basics of equipment and all of that. And one thing I do different, I don't encourage anybody to go buy a piece of equipment unless I've used it, I've done a lot of research about it, and that it can do multiple things for you. For example, these mics are USB and or XLR. Little more expensive than, say, a Blue Yeti. However, it's going to give you an expanded capability. Maybe you're going to start a podcast, you get a mic such as this, or say the ATR 2002, something along those lines, 2200. It is USB and or XLR. So you start a podcast, you can just USB it straight into your machine and record your tracks and or do live with a better quality mic. But you dig it, so now you're going to grow. Well, now you can throw the XLR cable on there and bring it into an audio interface and get multiple mics into that audio interface to record and or do a live show. So that one mic, you're just buying a second cable instead of having to buy a mic and then an XLR mic if you decide you want to bring guests on the show. So I cover a lot of topics like that, thinking of the future, and or, if you don't like it, you bought a mic that has a little higher resale value, and you'll be able to recoup those funds if that's what you choose to do. And that meetup is usually pretty popular as well. And with COVID precautions, we are limiting the space. So if you are interested, make sure you follow Sitch Radio on Meetup and jump at the opportunity to grab a seat, because they will be limited next week and next month, and probably for a few more months, given all the ever-changing mandates coming down to help deal with this pandemic. Let's see. I think that's it. Did I miss anything, Joey? Joey says
you hit all of it. Perfect.
He hit everything he wanted me to hit. This show is actually put together. Joey prepares all the content for this show, and I'd podcast that. So shout out to Joey. Give him some love in the comments if you are watching this live and or after the fact. It's a team effort here at Sitch, and the same team can be behind your show. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we will see you in a few hours if you're watching. I'd podcast that, or next week for another episode of Sitch Radio.